Welcome my friends to a Valentine's update video on our most beloved Kickstarter project. Although I sometimes feel like I'm on a blind date with this Kickstarter and I'm sitting at the restaurant table waiting for hours and hours and no one is showing up, and I'm right at the edge of thinking I might have been dumped. In the end it might all just be worth the wait, and at least we finally got a rough date on when our gambler's chest will arrive. So stay tuned and let's play a little game of who will be your favorite Valentine this year. Will it be our contestant behind door number 1? You're not interested in what's gonna come in some distant future, but rather on what's available to you right now. Some new releases on the store might just be the right thing for you. Or you're a really modest person, then door number 2 is the right thing for you. A small progress on future plastic releases. If you haven't made your own Showdown board by now, this might be what you're looking for. Last but not least, our final contestant, 2 expansions that are to be in production this year, and although they were hit with the same enormous delay as everything else, they might show up a bit sooner than expected. Let's jump into the video and look at this short but sweet update we've been presented this month. First and foremost, we have got an estimate on the Gambler's Chest delivery. Kingdom Death will attend Gen Con this year and delivery is to start soon afterwards. As Gen Con will take place early August, I think a delivery around September is a thing we can expect now. The first round of production is done, corrections have been made and everything starts to line up. I personally would hope that some of you that are able to attend Gen Con might even be able to pick up the Gambler's Chest on location or even buy one if you missed the pre-order. But I doubt they will do it, considering it might anger all the other backers that have waited for all those years. Instead, I think there will just be some small releases on Gen Con. Everybody is of course hoping for a vignette like the Giga Lion, but most probably it will be something similar to what's in the store right now. So let's have a quick look on what has been released this sale. Along with some returning models that have been up for Valentine's sale the last years, and I won't go into detail about them, there have been 3 new releases to the store that might be worth a look. The first one is called Blushing Owl Armor and is a pre-release for a future expansion that includes the previously released Blushing Owl. This will be called the Ringtail Fox expansion and will most probably be worked on after everything that was promised in the ongoing Kickstarter has been delivered. So, besides some plastic model releases, this expansion is in the distant future, and if you like this specific model and don't want to wait another decade or so for a game content release to grab it, it might be worth picking up. But again, there is no game content here, so consider if the price is worth it. The second new release is called the Death Crown Inheritor Ire, and it comes with some game content that can be implemented to upgrade your core game Phoenix. Unfortunately, you will have to pay a hefty price for these cards, as the release contains a painter scale miniature, and if we are being completely honest, most people are not happy that there is a painter scale model included with this release. You can't use it to play the game, as it's a larger size compared to the standard models, and I really wish Kingdom Death would stop releasing game content combined with miniature painting content. If you are just into painting miniatures, you will have game content that's nothing worth to you, and if you just want to upgrade your game with content, you will have this unusable huge miniature sitting around. Everybody loses except for a small percentage of people that like doing both. But let's look at the included game content and then decide if it's worth the price. First, I thought this would be a new AI card that gets added to the Phoenix deck if you're fighting the golden-eyed king of 1000 years. That's the legendary monster version of the Phoenix. But after some thoughtful reading of the description, I think it will function another way. There will be this new resource called Undying Heart, and it is described that you use this resource to craft 2 new gear cards called Heart Bow and Heart Stop Arrow, as well as a secret new AI card. So there's 2 ways to see this. Either retrust this description and you will add this new resource to your Phoenix resource deck. Those 3 other cards will then be a consequence of drawing and interacting with this resource, or this is just described very poorly, and the actual and more functional way this works is that we are looking at a misprint and this should actually be a hit location card. It would just make more sense if this was a hit location that you add to the Phoenix deck, drawing it at random during the fight, and then have a critical wound effect on it that gives you Undying Heart if you manage to crit it. This would make much more sense with the current game mechanics, and let's just hope I'm wrong with this and it's not a misprint. But it makes me wonder, if we look at the research card that is shown a bit down here, there's nothing written about gaining an IR card, so I don't think they will implement a new mechanic for this. The third release is called Lunar Twilight Night, and it comes with a new basic hunt event and a gear card. This content is again bound to a painter scale model, which is very unfortunate and gives us a story event that either leaves our investigating survivor deaf and blind if we roll low, or triggers one of 3 effects. A survivor with binge eating disorder will gain +1 d10 survival and 1 permanent luck. A survivor with marrow hunger disorder will receive -2 accuracy tokens and 2 permanent strength. And if none of the above triggers, you will gain the provided gear card Fish of Abundance, which gives you +1 luck on arrival. I personally think this model is not worth the money. The sculpture doesn't feel in line with the Kingdom Death aesthetics, and everybody who has played with Lonely Tree or other white boxes that give hunt events will know how terrible low your chances are of drawing a specific hunt event. If this happens once every 3 campaigns, you will consider yourself lucky. All in all, and you might have expected this now by listening to the tone of my voice, I'm not too happy about these releases. I think it really could have been great if it wasn't for those painter scale models. Paying $120 for some minor content just doesn't seem reasonable, and if it wasn't for those 2 huge models bound to the releases, the price could have easily been half and I would have been happy. But at the end of the day, everybody can decide for themselves if you like to have 2 models and a bit of content, or maybe a whole circle of Arkham Horror the legendary card game, which considering the price would be cheaper and is also a great game. But now let's go into the update and look at some of the new plastic productions. The first one is called the Sia Red Witch. This model is part of the Red Witch's Nemesis expansion, and it is featured in the Dark Herald Update 92. This to-be-released expansion is all about the cult of White Speakers. You might have heard of the White Speakers before, because the White Secret Story event of the core game introduced them to us. I won't spoiler some major story elements of the game right now, maybe in a future video, but in short, the White Speakers are an all-female cult that draws its magical power from sadistic rituals and by sharing mysterious stories with one another. The subsequent premise here is that words, names and stories within the world of Kingdom Death, as well as the blood of the entities, have a deeper magical power to themselves, and this cult specialized on harvesting and collecting that power to increase their own might. Now you can see white speakers as a kind of religion that is performed by different groups within the world that share different goals, and one of these groups is called the Red Witches. They are what I would call, in lack of a better word, a very fundamentalist and highly trained elitist group of white speakers. The miniature we see here is most probably the leader of the cult of the Red Witches, and the gameplay will be a nemesis encounter with multiple enemies on the board, each with their own unique strength, weaknesses and fighting styles, as well as a unique gear like the witching cloaks that allows them to swap places, making them a team fighting enemy that will be very hard to beat. Next up, we will see a short update on the Showdown board. When we last saw this in the previous update, I described it as looking very prototype, and as expected, this is still not completely done and will be pushed back to the second quarter of this year. One nice thing we are shown here is that the individual tiles are numbered on the bottom of the sculpts, and I'm really glad they showed this because people started to get very anxious about having to deal with these 350 pieces that look more or less the same, and don't get me wrong, even with the numbering, this will be a complete nightmare to set up, but now we can at least be sure that they are numbered, and if we look a bit closer down here, we can see some blurred numbers that show that a tile of the Showdown board will be about 10 mm high and 35 mm on each side, which is slightly larger than the game board, but just like 2 or 3 mm. So I think there won't be any problems between the size of the release models and the new diameters. So in conclusion, this will be an absolute terrible nightmare to set up, but your miniatures will look great on it. For this last part of the video, we will look at the Black Knight and Frogdog update. Besides from minor content that has been added, both expansions have been finished for some years now and will be sent to print around April. There's not much to say about the Frogdog, except for the bullfrog dog now playing out similar to a legendary encounter like the Beast of Sorrow from the core game, but we got some small nice things revealed about the Black Knight. First of all, here are the things we know about the Black Knight. It will be in an expansion that can be played as part of the upcoming Pariah Inverted Mountain campaign that is in the making, but it will as well come with a 5-year campaign called Squire's Campaign and revolves around the Black Knight as a core nemesis monster. Originally, this was planned as a storyline without a settlement phase, and it just revolves around 4 specific survivors that act as servants taking care of the Black Knight's domain, seeing him as their lord and living in the shadow of his protection, worshipping him from a distance, only emerging from hiding whilst the Black Knight is well asleep. But of course you can't hide forever, and there will be very unique fights within the Black Knight's domain, the Cliffside Sanctuary. This sanctuary will be filled with special terrain called elastomer stages, and the main mechanic of Black Knight will work around knockback, throwing survivors into these statues that are elastic and can rebound survivors, ultimately kicking them off the side of the mountain to their death. As I said before, there have been some tweaks to this campaign. There will be new kind of cards called suspicion cards, which will most likely replace settlement events and drive along the story, revealing background, and there will be a trimmed down version of a settlement phase. I don't expect there to be a lot of interaction because there won't be a settlement to develop as we only play 4 survivors in total, but I think it's great to have some time in between the fights to progress the story, and overall I'm looking forward to this new format of short campaigns that will be much easier to bring to the table with friends and have a conclusive Kingdom Death session taking place over the course of one evening playing. Alright my friends, this is it for this month's update. I hope you enjoyed some of the background information, and I'm especially happy that I could talk about some game content that will be released this year. After all this time of waiting, it will be great to have new content to dive into. And if every delivery timeline announced with this update holds up, we will have a great year ahead of us with a lot of new content. Thank you all for watching and for being here, and I see you next time.